Everybody, it is Monday in the aftermath of NFL Week 2. We're here to talk about kind of all the most important stuff that happened, the biggest Dynasty storylines. That's my goal, to show up here every week on Monday. Certainly not with a comprehensive understanding of everything that we just watched, but with some high-level thoughts, big notes from my initial Dynasty rankings updates that I do on Monday. And we're gonna change up the format a little bit today. I've got some bullet points I want to get through, and then we'll try to take some breaks to do questions along the way. I don't know. I'm kind of figuring out how I want to do this on the fly. So appreciate you guys being here. And obviously the goal above all is to just make this thing actionable. See a lot of members in the chat already. Love to see that. I saw T is here. Austin is here. What is going on? Khan is here. Ready to panic sell JJ McCarthy for Daniel Jones. Yeah, you're going to want to pull the trigger on that. Absolutely want to pull the trigger on that. Please do it. Accept that trade like yesterday. Max is here as well. Nico is here calling me out for being late. I hit the button at 4:15, man. I don't know what to tell you. Went live at 4:15. But yeah, we got a lot to get into. Drew and Lee, shout out to you guys as well. So many members in the chat. Love to see it. All right. So lots to talk about. I teased a little bit in the announcement and the thumbnail. We will talk about Rome Odunze. We're not going to talk about him right now. I do want to start us off here with some words of wisdom from one of the fantasy football goats, Andy Holloway, who had a great tweet today. He said, you feel that data gathering. Derrick Henry was the GOAT, Hall of Famer in week 1. He was nothing in week 2. Justin Fields was electric in week 1. Justin Fields was Justin Fields in week 2. Aaron Rodgers was a fantasy king in week 1. He returned to earth in week 2. Ken Walker was a bust in week 1. He was a hero in week 2. The truth is not going to be found in a week or two. Lots of emotional reactions, not a lot of conclusions. We are data gathering, learning defenses, offenses, schemes, consistency. The good fantasy football players breathe, long season, gather data, adjust over time. I think I've certainly seen a lot of it in my Discord that there's a lot of panic. There's a lot of people freaking out about things. And surely there are some things we've seen so far that are concerning, that are probably going to keep up the whole season. At the same time, there's a lot of stuff that we're not even going to remember about these first couple of games at the end of the season. So I do think it's a good idea to take a little bit of a breath and realize that the sky is probably not falling. I mean, look, if your Superflex quarterback room was Brock Purdy and Joe Burrow, you could be in trouble. But in general, I don't think it's time to be sounding the alarms on everything. And also, panicking doesn't actually help you at all. Like, people asking, should I panic on player X? Should I panic on player Z? Like, panicking is not it's not a transaction that you can make. Like, you can only do 4 things with a player. You can buy, sell, hold, or drop them, right? Saying you should panic on a player is not actionable. It's not helpful to say, yes, you should panic about this player, especially if it's a player everyone's panicking on. You're not going to be able to sell them for anything. You're not going to be able to sell them for like a fair price. So it's like, I'm not going to say, yes, you should panic. Like, am I adjusting expectations on certain guys? Absolutely. But again, there's nothing to be gained from just sort of like wringing our hands and saying we got everything wrong. So before we jump into our first item of the day, I'll catch up on a couple of these questions from the people that did show up early. Joseph Miller asked, what's a good selling price for Browning? If you're a rebuilder, not getting any nibbles, what should you do? I mean, look, if you're holding Jake Browning and you have no intentions of using him or no need to use him, I see no reason you shouldn't just accept any offer of a second round pick for him. That seems totally reasonable to me. I don't know why you would need to ask for more. He's not that good of a quarterback. He's not a guy that I think is really at any risk of becoming a long-term starter in the league. So yeah, I think you could sell him for a second. If you're not getting that offer right away, I think you can probably get away with holding him for a week or two. I don't think that's going to ruin your rebuild. So that's what I would say. BTJ or Wan'Dale Robinson in Dynasty? These are the hard-hitting questions, guys, that we'll get to. I will still take Brian Thomas by at least a little bit in this one. Maverick asks, thoughts on BTJ? People theorizing he didn't give his all because Lawrence throws hospital balls. Yeah, we'll talk about BTJ as well. He did move down a bit in my Dynasty rankings. I think people are more likely like over concerned as opposed to like underreacting to this. So again, to tell you should panic about Brian Thomas because he might not live up to the original expectations, it's just not very helpful, right? He's probably better than most people think he is right now, would be my quick take on that. Dante, appreciate this. Found your channel recently, love all your content. Glad to be here. I'm happy you're here as well. We're going to be doing this every week, going over the games and what happened here. How much fab would you spend on Browning? I mean, if the reports that Burrow's going to miss like basically the entire season are true, I think all of it. I think you probably just spend all of it and hope that you can pick him up. Like in a Superflex Dynasty League, I mean, at least in my experience, the waiver wire is pretty barren anyway. The idea that you could pick up a starting quarterback that has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the waiver wire, that seems like the pickup of the year. I think you probably just want to spend all of it. Would you trade AJ Brown for Brian Thomas Jr.? Yeah, absolutely I would. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I would totally do that. Biggest winner through the first 2 weeks? Good question. I mean, I think Roma Dunze's got to be in the conversation there for a biggest winner. Harold Fannin, Tucker Kraft, Byshel Tootin. I think there are a lot of big winners that we'll talk about here. Tyler Warren, possibly. I think Tyler Warren might be the answer, actually. We're going to jump into our first topic here. What's up, Marty? I see you there in the chat. We're going to jump into our first topic here, and you guys are going to see my very low effort. I mean, the truth is I did make an effort. I just don't want to say I made an effort because it's so lame. This is my effort to go ahead and do some graphics today. So I've got this little Canva document. I'm just going to be copying and pasting in graphics that I saved so that we can put them on the screen. Easiest way for me to get through what I'm trying to get through. And prep quickly for the stream. So I've got a list of these quarterback injuries here that we'll go ahead and talk about from Mr. Matthew Berry. We got Joe Burrow out for 3 months, apparently. Justin Fields in the concussion protocol. We've got Jaden Daniels with a knee sprain, and then J.J. McCarthy with an ankle sprain. I think it's likely that Jaden Daniels misses this week. Marcus Mariota is the backup. J.J. McCarthy probably going to miss 2 to 4 games based on what I heard. His backup is Carson Wentz. And then for Justin Fields, we'll see if he plays this week. It's probably 50-50. If he does have the concussion, his backup would be Tyrod Taylor. So if you're missing out on Browning, you still probably have some options out there if you really, really need a quarterback fill-in. Marcus Mariota has been a guy that I've rostered in a lot of my Superflex Dynasty leagues just because he is mobile. We saw last year the game that he played like 3/4 of, or a little more than 3/4 of, when Daniels was out. He scored as like a QB1, I believe. So he's been a guy that I do like rostering. I think I have him on a number of teams. If he's out there on the waiver wire, I think if he's out, he's a guy you could definitely play. I didn't look at who the Commanders are facing, but unless it's some really, really strong defense, I'm probably comfortable throwing Mariota out there, assuming that he's going to throw a bunch of screen passes to Deebo Samuel. He's probably going to scramble for 40 or 50 yards. That's a guy you can play. I don't know about Carson Wentz. I mean, KOC has been a quarterback whisperer. That being said, the Vikings are letting up a ton of pressure, and Carson Wentz does not do well under pressure. I wouldn't want to put Carson Wentz in my starting lineup this week. And then, what are you looking at? Maybe 1 or 2 week fill-in. I wouldn't bid a lot of fab on Carson Wentz, but probably worth picking him up in Superflex just to stash him just in case. Tyrod Taylor is probably a better start than Wentz if both Fields and McCarthy miss. But none of these other injuries outside of Burrow are expected to be long-term. So don't need to bid a lot of fab. You don't need to go out and trade a significant pick for any of these other backup quarterbacks. I think if you really do need a long-term solution ahead after Joe Burrow, I think Jake Browning is a viable enough target. I wouldn't want to send a second-round pick for him. That feels really unpleasant. But anything short of a second, I think if you feel like your team should still be competing and you just really do need a quarterback that you can start and the rest of the team looks pretty good, anything short of a second-round pick, I'd be willing to send. Shocked emoji asks, would I be crazy for taking an offer of Genti and Egbuka for Justin Jefferson? No, I don't think I think you'd be crazy to not take that offer in Dynasty. I think you got to take those two pieces for Jefferson. I mean, just based on like where I have them ranked. I mean, I've got Jefferson at 9th overall in my rankings. I have Genti at 13. Even if you want to argue he should be like 15, 16, whatever, you throw another top 30 asset or top 35 asset and Egbuka on top. I think you definitely want to tear down from Jefferson for that package. David Weber, I don't know if I would do that right now. I think I would definitely want to wait at least to see what happens in tonight's game, just to have all the information. I don't know for sure about trading Ladd for Brian Thomas right now. I have them in the same tier. Obviously, haven't moved Ladd since last week because we haven't had a game. Not that I anticipate moving him really one way or the other. I think we kind of know who he is. I have Brian Thomas right now sitting one spot ahead, but again, I'm just diving into my evaluation of the week, and so it's possible he could move down further. I don't know yet. So I just want to wait. I just kind of want to wait and see. I just want to let the dust settle here. Like there is, I think there should be some concern about the quarterback play for Lawrence. I think there should be some concern about the low effort plays from Brian Thomas. Certainly all of that could be cleaned up. He could totally bounce back, but it's not something to just completely ignore. Like, I don't know how many of you have seen it, but there are some tweets like Josh Norris put them out. Jacob Sanderson had like reactions to some of these plays. Like Brian Thomas was like noticeably not showing effort on a lot of plays. He caused an interception. He like short-armed a 4th down play that cost them the game basically. It's not good body language, and I don't know what the situation is. Liam Cohn said he was dealing with a minor wrist injury. That seems like kind of a weak excuse. But yeah, again, it could totally, fix itself. I'm not saying to panic sell him low, but at the same time, I think Ladd McConkey is a very safe asset. I don't know if I would go, and I don't know if it's enough of a potential win to go and make that trade right now. So we're gonna sit tight on that. I'm not selling Egbuka for AJ Brown. I've got Egbuka ranked a full tier ahead right now in the Dynasty rankings. AJ Brown, he did get back on track a little bit in terms of the target share. He got 8 targets. They were all at least all the completed targets were very short. I think they might have all been slants from what I remember watching. And the team only had to throw 22 times in this game. It just seems like a common theme for the Eagles. Like, even when they play good teams, just seems like we almost never get those big shootouts. And sure, they're going to happen at some point. There's going to be games where we throw 35 times. But There's also going to be games where they throw 22, 23 times. And if A.J. Brown doesn't break a big play, it just gets a little bit rough. So let's move on to our next topic here, which is really just wide receiver movement in general. I have a couple different talking points on this. First, I just want to throw up my updated top 5 Dynasty wide receivers. My full Dynasty rankings are available, by the way, pinned in the chat and also in the description. You can find the access to that. It's available for all YouTube members in the second or third tier. They're available through the Discord. I'm updating them every single week. Right now, these are my top 5 Dynasty wide receivers. Malik Neighbors moves to number 1 after this week because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, because we saw him pick up right where he left off after his rookie season, even with Russell Wilson at quarterback. Now Jamar Chase loses his quarterback. Like, what was the big edge that Jamar Chase had over Malik Neighbors? Said he had Joe Burrow at quarterback. He doesn't have Joe Burrow anymore. Is Jamar Chase probably still a better wide receiver than Jamar Chase is? Is Chase probably a better wide receiver than Neighbors today? Yeah, probably. But Neighbors is multiple years younger than him, and he's producing at the same, basically the same level right now. Probably has a higher points per game after that insane explosion he had against the Cowboys. I just don't think there's enough of a gap here in terms of the talent, in terms of the long-term expectations, that we shouldn't just take the multi-year age gap and run with it from Malik Neighbors. So he's 1 for me, Chase at 2. And then I've moved Puka Nacua up to 3. Obviously, Justin Jefferson is a phenomenal wide receiver. But Puka Nacua is also a phenomenal wide receiver. And he's proving that each and every week. The guy is just absolutely absurd. That 45-yard touchdown on a handoff was amazing. He gets peppered with targets. There are only 2 players that get targeted for the Rams. It's Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. I just don't know what the guy needs to do, right, to get that respect. But the peripheral numbers are going to be similar between these two. Puka's been stronger than Jefferson in terms of the per route numbers, yards per out run, targets per out run. And now we have questions with JJ McCarthy. Like, not only is he injured, we don't know if he's any good. He's been horrifically bad for 7 of the 8 quarters of NFL football that he's played so far. I think there's enough reason there to say, like, I have some concern. I thought KOC could just kind of wipe away any concerns about quarterbacks. He has not done that yet with McCarthy outside of, again, 1 quarter against the Bears, who just let up 55 points to the Lions. So it could be a rough year, if McCarthy can't get it together, if there's too much pressure because the offensive line can't block anybody, Jefferson's going to struggle. Like, we're going to get Addison back in this offense soon. So I think he's at 4, and I think you could even argue putting Lamb ahead of him. Like, I think Jefferson and Lamb are right there. Lamb has been better so far this year. Another 100-yard game this week, although the Cowboys did throw like 55 times. So, these are my top 5. And then I think after that, you get to Amon-Ra, you get to Nico Collins, and then you get to a group of like London, Brian Thomas, Lad McConkey, JSN. But this is the top 5 right now. Larson, I do believe Harold Fannon's the real deal. I talked about him. The first guy I talked about in my video last week, if you see the thumbnail, well, there are actually 2 thumbnails. One of them had Kenneth Walker on it. One of them had Tyler Warren and Emeka Egbuka on it. But either way, if you go and check out the video I posted last week about week 1 changing my dynasty rankings, I did talk about Harold Fannin. I think he's absolutely the real deal. All right. This is a good question. Would you do Chase for Neighbors straight up or try to get more? I mean, I would certainly try to get more. Chase has had that pedigree as being the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. It's just tough when he just lost his quarterback, but at least he's coming off a huge game. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason not to offer the trade with a plus. Try to trade Chase for Neighbors in a second. I mean, why not? I think that's totally fine to do that. Tootin or 2 seconds. I love Bishal Tootin. We'll talk about him. I think you probably want to take 2 seconds over the 4th round running back who's still technically a backup on his own team. Like, obviously, there is the next Bucky Irving thing, whatever. Like, there's a bit of a loss aversion thing there where you don't want to sell too early on a guy, but I don't know. If the 2 seconds look really are really late projected, then I could see holding, but it's really hard to justify. If you're talking like just 2 random seconds, I feel like you've got a better rate of hitting a significant player there. All right, so moving away from my top 5 Dynasty wide receivers, we also have, let's see. I talked about Brian Thomas. Like I said, a little bit of a move down. I'm still waiting to kind of dig in some more to this Jaguar situation before I just declare the sky is falling. He did have really, really strong peripherals in week 1. I forgot to save this tweet from Jacob Gibbs, but I'll see if I can find it real quick. Actually, I don't even need that. I can just pull it up on the data suite here. We look at Brian Thomas through 2 games here. Just this past week, he had 11 targets. Fantasy points charts targets sometimes differently. They don't count throwaways all the time. So 11 targets. That was 29% targets per out run. That's great. He's got over 50% of the team's air yards. So he's getting these downfield looks too. They're just not connecting. So far in the season, 27% targets per out run in total. Just an abysmal 0.9 yards per out run. So the efficiency's not there. The volume stats are there. 45% of the air yards, 27% targets per out run, about a 25% target share in total. Do I wish he was getting a little bit more of the design stuff? Do I wish there was a little bit less De'Ami Brown? Absolutely. But for a guy with his skill set, what he showed in his first season with the ADOT that he's playing at, there's no reason why he still couldn't blow up a little bit in the stat sheet if we could get on the same page with Lawrence, if we could get these effort issues worked out. Again, it's still just Liam Cohn's 3rd game or 2nd game as a head coach. The offense itself has been efficient outside of this connection. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. Mark G with a super chat. Appreciate you. The 199. 2 quick questions, Hendo and a second for Achan. I'll take the Henderson side there, personally. I know it looks rough right now with Henderson's participation. He's going to figure it out, guys. He's a really explosive athlete. He's very talented. He had some rough pass pro reps, which happens for rookies. For what it's worth, it was a strength of his as a prospect, but he did struggle in week 2. That got him taken off the field, and they just kind of rode the hot hand with Ramondre Stevenson. It's going to be Henderson at some point. I think people would do well to remember how slowly Jahmyr Gibbs started in his rookie season. It does come around for these guys that have the talent. But yeah, I'll take Henderson in a second. And then Tootin or Corum, that one's just not close for me, not even a little bit close. It's Byshal Tootin by miles and miles and miles. I have Byshal Tootin multiple tiers ahead. I have him in my early 2nd round tier. Corum for me is just kind of whatever. He's just another handcuff running back, a worse version of a Tyler Algier or worse version of DJ Giddens or whatever. He's not going to take the job from Kyren. And even if he was to do that, the Rams don't throw to running backs. Corum himself is not an explosive athlete. He's also 25 and a half years old already. Yeah. So just no contest there. I would much rather have Byshal Tootin. Appreciate you for the super chat there. Also, let's stop here with the ridiculous Wentz might be keeping the job. Let's be serious for 2 seconds, please. I'm begging you. All right. So anyway, that's Brian Thomas. JSN and Tetaroa McMillan are also guys that are moving up for me. They've been really impressive. I don't have anything for right now. Those 2 guys have both been really impressive. JSN just putting up a ridiculously high target share, not sustainable target share, just based on what we've seen historically across the full season. What's happening is the Seahawks are not throwing the ball much. And so it's boosting up this target share for JSN that's just not going to carry over. But back-to-back 100-yard games, it's been efficient between him and Darnold. It's the only thing that's working in the passing game for the most part. He's answered all the questions, right? About whether he could play outside, whether he could handle being the clear number 1 with DK gone, whether he could overcome mediocre quarterback play from Sam Darnold. Like, he's doing all of that. So he moved up for me into the same range as Ladd McConkey, and I moved Ted McMillan up there as well. He's led his team in targets both of the first 2 weeks. He's running all the routes. He looks like a pro NFL wide receiver out there. Like, he's just head and shoulders better than everyone else on that team. Bryce Young has been super shaky. That's the big thing that needs to get ironed out. But if Bryce can improve or whatever, or they get a new quarterback at some point, like, it's gonna be wheels up for McMillan. He just looks awesome. And moving a little bit further down, well, we do have one loser. I do have to point out one loser in the rankings, which is Marvin Harrison Jr. I understand that he had a solid week 1 performance, at least in terms of fantasy. But through 2 games, just has a target share of 18.5%. He's being targeted on 16% of his routes, 1.61 yards per route run. We're not seeing the efficiency overall. He was good in the first game, not so much in the second game. And we're not seeing the volume stats at all. Like, there are only 2 viable targets outside of like James Conner in the Cardinals offense. The fact that he cannot consolidate a significant target share on this team is very concerning. And whether you want to blame Kyler for not throwing to him, you want to blame the coaches for not scheming him up correctly. Like, he seems really talented, but again, it's not happening. There's just no excuse when the only competition for targets on your team is Trey McBride. To have an 18.5% target share is just so incredibly weak coming into your second season when you should be breaking out, taking a step forward. So again, whatever context you want to apply to it or say that it is, this is the situation that he's in. And I'm not expecting consistent results at all this season. I think he's a wide receiver 2 with some spike week upside. And nothing more. So he's going to move down for me. I'm not just going to keep him high because he was a good prospect and maybe things will get better eventually. If things get better eventually, I can adjust at that point. But I have no reason to think that they're going to be better next week or the week after that or the week after that. So I'm moving him down. At the very least, I've moved him down to wide receiver 15 for now. That puts him behind Emeka Egbuka for me. That puts him behind Travis Hunter for me. We'll see if he goes down further. Honestly, I would be tempted to put Rashee Rice ahead of him just because I feel like we know what we're getting with him when he's back on the field. But I will think about it throughout the week. And then the other guy that we have to get to that's a riser, I just don't know how high to move him up, is Rome Odunze. I promised to talk about Rome Odunze. I'll talk about him. Some people are saying they're worried about Travis Hunter. Thoughts on Travis Hunter? I mean, it's his second game. Like, we got to give a little more grace to a guy that's at the beginning of his career and is also playing another position at the same time. But yeah, we should be a little bit worried that he's being used as like a little gadgety slot receiver. I don't think it's really a Travis Hunter problem though. Like, I don't have any reason to doubt that he can get open and run those other routes. We just have to see the usage change. I don't know when we're going to see the usage change, but I do believe that he's a better player than De'Ami Brown. And I think he's going to learn over time. Like, he is a very young player. He is playing 2 positions. I think we should expect some gradual change here. And I do believe in Liam Cohn. Like, let me just stay on the Jaguars for a second. I do really believe in Liam Cohn in the sense that you take away the turnovers, right? You look at the team, very efficient, like yards per play wise. They were running a successful offense outside of the miscues. When you're talking about just the scheme of this offense, it is well designed in the sense that it achieves its intended goal of moving the ball down the field. It's just that there's been so many mistakes, the results haven't been there. But I do think if the mistakes get ironed out, we're going to start to think of this offense very differently in terms of its effectiveness. So anyway, obviously not the run out we've hoped for with Travis Hunter yet, but I'm not sounding the alarms. But Rome Odunze, let me pull up his stats here compared to the other Bears. here's the thing. I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this was one of my bigger takes of the offseason, or at least it was one of the ones that like got the most criticism or got, I don't know if you guys can read that, but it's one of the ones that kind of drew criticism because what I was saying about Rome Odunze is that he was not discounted enough after his rookie year, which was legitimately poor from pretty much every perspective other than arbitrary. And by when I say arbitrary, I don't mean wrong, but I just mean like arbitrarily people looking at the film and saying this guy is getting open, right? And I have a process, and my process does care about that type of thing, but I'm not basing all of my opinions on, yeah, this player can get open, therefore he's going to score fantasy points. Like Rashad Bateman gets open. He's been getting open for years. He doesn't score fantasy points. My thought on Rome was that after his first year, when he was kind of unable to take over for Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, he was just sort of in this third role, very inefficient in that role. I thought it was more likely he was going to be, low-end wide receiver 2 type, a guy that hangs around and is decent but isn't dominating an offense. That's what I was expecting. And it's funny because if you told me heading into the year, or like heading in, that the team was going to draft 2 weapons in the top 40, and then the offense was going to look like absolute garbage for the first 2 weeks, and Ben Johnson was going to look like a total fraud, I would think, okay, well, I guess my Rome Odunze take panned out. And yet, despite the fact that they drafted these weapons high, despite the fact that the offense has looked totally incompetent, despite the fact that Ben Johnson's not carrying over any of the success that he had in Detroit, Rome Odunze is still producing. It's very surprising to me. But I'm not someone who's going to dig my heels in. I'm not going to just say like, well, it's all a fluke, whatever. Like, look at this chart here. Through 2 games, Rome Odunze, 28% target share. No one else on this team is above 16%. He has stolen the offense. Like, he is the offense at this point. He's running the most routes. He's earning the most targets by far. He is the most efficient on those targets, the only player on the team over 2 yards per out run. I think we have every reason to believe he's just a really, really good player. So I have moved him into my top 20 wide receivers. I've moved him ahead of T. Higgins. I moved him ahead of a bunch of other guys that I had sort of in that late first tier that I had a little more conviction on the talent, because I think Rome has sort of jumped those guys into another tier of talent. So I think he's in the conversation now ahead of Higgins, ahead of Olave, ahead of obviously ahead of like Devonta Smith and George Pickens. And I think the question becomes like Rome Odunze or AJ Brown at this point. And I think for now, I'm still going to take AJ Brown. Again, it's still the beginning of the week. There's still a lot of time for me to like research before I make a video or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Like, my hope is, if you are someone that enjoys this channel and that you watch these videos, my hope is that you don't watch because you think that I'm going to get every single take right, but because you think I have a reasonable process that is based in just reasoning and logic, and that sometimes it's going to be wrong because the NFL is a crazy random world. And it's not to say there was no possible way of foreseeing Rome Odunze succeeding, because other people did. But just that my process didn't lead me to be super high on him. So I'm adjusting. Obviously, if you have been following along with me and just fading and you don't have any shares, like, it's going to be really hard to get them now. So it's like, what good does it do you? But I'm just want to say, like, I recognize that this was a bad call, and that he has found success here. I'll be very interested to see what happens throughout the year, as presumably Ben Johnson's going to have to put aside his pride and like let Colston Loveland and Luther Burden play a little bit. Like Cole Kmet and Olamide Zaccheaus are not going to get it done. This offense is dead in the water, and they need to bring some youth into the fold here. So my hope is that Loveland and Burden over time are going to get more involved. Obviously, we should defer to Rome as the top target in this offense. I will be curious to see if those guys are good, or if one of them is really good. Let's see if one of those guys can take away some work. I'll be curious. Someone asked if Colston Loveland is dead. I mean, that seems like a bit of a a stretch when we haven't really even seen him on the field. Am I worried? Absolutely. But he's a top 10 pick who was a really, really good college prospect. I have to imagine he's going to get a chance at some point. So I do want to see him actually get a chance. He seems like a really talented, like, he seems like a tight end that has like wide receiver route running and ball skills at times. I want to see him on the field. Same thing with Luther Burden. Like, these guys are going to get to play eventually. So I'm going to exercise patience with those guys. Rome is the one you want. I have moved DJ Moore down. I mean, I already had DJ Moore down. I had him as a sell. At least I got one thing right, that I had DJ Moore as a sell. His target shares have been terrible so far. He's not, in the Amon-Ra St. Brown role or whatever people thought he was going to be. So I don't want any part of DJ Moore, really. Like, he had a lot of brand equity coming into this offseason. I have him behind Deebo Samuel at this point. I have him behind Calvin Ridley, Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman. I just don't see any reason to keep him elevated over those other players. So that's kind of my quick take on the Bears. I do see some messages here. I appreciate you guys coming to bat for me about the process and stuff. Like, I promise I'm not looking for any kind of a pity party or like, people to make me feel better about getting it wrong. Like, I get stuff wrong. I'm cool with getting stuff wrong. I just feel bad when I screw stuff up and I give you bad advice. And I just want you to understand that I'm aware of that and it's something I'm working on, but I'm also aware you can't iron out all the mistakes. Like, you're going to have wrong takes. So it is what it is. Let me see. Nico kind of voicing some of what I said. Could his target percentage go down if Loveland and Burden get on the field? It could. And this isn't like sell your Rome shares before they get on the field. We have no idea. But what we do know that Olamide Zaccheaus and Cole Kmet are not good at earning targets. And so there is a world where Loveland and Burden are good at earning targets and they get on the field. Naturally, the targets are going to have to get reshuffled around. That could lead to a slightly lower share. But even with a slightly lower share for Rome, he would still be, surpassing expectations, especially if the offense gets better, because then the size of the pie increases, the efficiency can increase. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with this about T. Higgins, just to slightly change the subject here. If you can get T. Higgins for a late first, early second, he's a good buy. I don't know what this is in relation to. Oh, somebody asked if he's a good buy. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's really like panicking on T. Higgins that much. I have him at the top of my, like, just above a late first in value. So yes, I would agree with this. Sorry, a lot of stuff in the chat. I'm just trying to catch up with here. Okay, first of all, don't say this. Colston Loveland could be OJ Howard. That's just painful. I will say that OJ Howard did not have a good receiving profile. Unlike, like, Loveland's receiving profile is pristine. Like, OJ Howard never had that. But yeah, this is a terrible, terrible thing to say to me. I don't appreciate it. Waddle or Kenneth Walker. I have these guys pretty close. I have Waddle just ahead. But Kenneth Walker, big winner from this past week. He didn't get the snaps, but he just did so much more with his snaps than Charbonnet did. You have to imagine that we're going to see a little balancing back. Charbonnet had like 10 total yards or something, and Walker had like 130 rushing yards or something. So I've always maintained he was the better player. I talked about in the video last week, I think there were going to be better days ahead, and we saw that right away. I just genuinely think he's the better rusher. Like, you're going to find games, because he can be a little bit boom bust. You're going to find games where maybe he makes a couple of bad plays or he dances around too much or whatever and takes some losses. And Charbonnet is going to be a little more consistent, but Charbonnet is also just not explosive. And so you're rarely going to see him have the big games. Like, you might see, like, what I'm saying is you might get games where Walker averages like 2.5 yards per carry. And then you also get these crazy games where he's at like 8, where Charbonnet is going to be like, I guess this isn't even true because he averaged like 1 yard per carry, but he's more likely to be the guy that just gives you 3.5 like every time, because he's just more of like north-south consistent. Like, he doesn't break big plays, but he also doesn't make as many mistakes or take as many risks. But yeah, I just think Walker's like good enough to force the coaches to change things up. And it makes some sense that he missed a lot of the offseason. They want to, not that they're easing him in because he's not healthy, but like maybe he just needs to regain a little bit of that trust. And so I think he showed a lot of promise this past week. Question from Shix, one of our potential league winners. Any running backs that are looking like a good value trade for a contending team? I mean, James Conner is and always will be, not always will be, eventually he will not be. He is and seems to always be over the last few years the contending target for running backs. I think as much as I am a fan of Vishal Tudin, I think you could certainly dip your toe in the Travis Etienne waters. I think if Chuba Hubbard is a guy that you can get without giving up a first, which is certainly a big if, but if you could, I think he is a nice guy that you can ride to like a high-end RB2, low-end RB1 type of season. I was happy to see Kamara getting a 17% target share this game after not really getting any targets in the first week. So I think Kamara continues to be a guy that you can go pick up on contending teams. It's just very league dependent because it's like any of these running backs that's already on a contending roster is going to be holding on to them. So it's kind of like who's available, right? And so you can't really be too picky. Jordan Mason, I think, is a nice pickup. Again, kind of an open secret, though. It's not like you're really stealing him from anybody. Jordan Mason, though, is clearly already the lead rusher for the Vikings, and now Aaron Jones has a bit of a hamstring injury. I don't know what the timeline is on that, but Mason's probably going to lead the way from here on out. And I mean, Javonte Williams, man, he just refuses to die. I don't want to be that guy, but can somebody explain to me the difference between Javonte Williams and Kyren Williams at this point? I don't want to be, I mean, just in all seriousness, Kyren Williams has always been a volume merchant, never been efficient. What is actually the difference between Javonte getting all the backfield work for the Cowboys, other than the fact that he runs more routes than Kyren? Like, I'm just asking. I mean, I've not been a Kyren fan. I've not been a Kyren fan or a Javonte fan. I've never thought either of them were particularly good, at least not since Javonte got hurt. But just like looking at what their roles are, other than the fact that Kyren has the contract, I don't really know what the difference is between the two. And like, I don't even think this is true. Like, I think Jarquez Hunter is better than Jaden Blue. He's certainly a better running back than Jaden Blue. And I think Blake Corum's a better running back. I mean, Jaden Blue can't even get active for these games. So, I don't know. Just to be clear, guys, like I don't have Javonte ranked ahead or even in the same tier as Kyren in Dynasty. And if I had to choose for the rest of the season, I'm still going to take Kyren. But I do think it's like interesting that you even have to think about it, right? Soren, what's up? Welcome to the potential superstars. Get access to those Dynasty rankings. You can see they're a bit of a mess right now because I'm still mid-update. But I'll be finishing that update later tonight. And I'll send out I like to send out a big announcement in the Discord with all the notes about the update. So talking about all the big movers, some of my thoughts on why they're moving, where they're moving to, all that stuff. And I send out more updates. I probably did 3 or 4 additional updates last week as we got new information, as we saw the Monday night games, as we saw the Tank Bigsby trade, as we saw the Thursday night game, every time there was news, move the rankings around, send out an announcement. So I think it's helpful for like not only seeing what I think of players, but also just staying on top of trends and transactions and injuries and things like that. I do think it adds value. And Nico calls out the Jaylen Warren train. I totally forgot to mention my GOAT, Jaylen Warren. He has like banished Caleb Johnson to the shadow realm. I think he's a great pickup for contenders as well. If you can send a second with like just a little sweetener on top for Jalen Warren. I think that's awesome. He could totally hold this job all year. There's absolutely no reason that he couldn't do that. He is a very good running back. Every time he's been healthy in his career, he's been a very good running back. He made that insane 60-yard reception last week. That was one of the plays of the week. I don't even know how he pulled that off. So I'm high on Warren. I'm low on Caleb Johnson. Excuse me. I think that would be a good target for you as well. And we did get a little bit off track as far as talking about wide receivers, which was the topic of the time. I've got two or three more guys I want to get through. And then we can move on to some more running back talk and some tight end talk. Here's a tweet from Rich Rebar. Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall have run 47 routes with each other on the field without George Kittle. On those plays, Jennings 13 targets, 27.7% target rate per route. Pearsall has 6, 12.8% target rate per route. Another guy I caught some heat for fading this offseason was Ricky Pearsall. I faded him at cost with the expectation that Juwan Jennings would be on the field. It doesn't surprise me all that much that after a big holdout and then getting hurt in week 1, we saw Pearsall put together a nice game. And I did move up Ricky Pearsall in his rankings, in my rankings, not his rankings. I moved him up. He's like right on that late 1, early 2 borderline for me. But this is kind of this distribution here was closer to what I was expecting to see with Juwan Jennings healthy and on the field. And honestly, I think it will be closer than this. I don't think we're going to see him doubling him up, over the course of the whole season. But I do still believe Juwan Jennings will be the top target here with Kittle out. And that's what we saw in week 2. He was just so the go-to guy last year when Pearsall was just absolutely not that guy. Ricky Pearsall does some things really, really well. Again, so much of the offense is dictated on what Kyle Shanahan wants to scheme up. He has always seemed interested in scheming up work for Jennings. Jennings plays this really friendly, like F wide receiver role where he's kind of in the slot and he does the dirty work as a blocker, but he gets some of these passes closer to the line of scrimmage. Whereas Pearsall, they have him playing out wide. They have him working these vertical routes down the field. Like, especially with Mac Jones in the game, I think he's going to lean on Jennings more as almost like a pseudo tight end. So I think you can start both of these guys with confidence moving forward just because Mac Jones looked to have command of the offense. But again, I would still predict Jennings to be the higher scorer for the time being. What players could you target to pivot off of Ricky Pearsall? That's a good question. Probably not popular, but I do still have Jalen Waddle ahead of him. I think you could maybe aim a little bit higher than that, though. I also still have George Pickens ahead of him. I think Chris Olave would be the guy I'd be most excited to go after, though. And that might sound really unexciting, especially because he hasn't lit up the box score so far this year. But we pull up the Saints here, and I don't have their stuff ready to go, but I can totally get it ready to go here because I do want to talk about this. The Saints offense has been so consolidated, and it's hard to say that Spencer Rattler has been good, but he hasn't been horrendous, and they've been really high volume. They run a lot of plays. I just want you to check this out right here with the Saints, right? They have basically 4 guys that are on the field all the time in Olave, Juwan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks. And we have Chris Olave with a 27.5% target share so far. He's being targeted on 29% of his routes. Now, the efficiency hasn't been there because they have not been able to connect. And, I mean, maybe that's just an issue that continues, that persists throughout the year. But I always like to lean into players that are getting the usage and not getting the efficiency yet versus players that are running hot on efficiency and not getting usage. Like Jamison Williams last week, 14% target share is pretty terrible. he gets 2 big plays and he ends up with 100 yards and a touchdown. But like, when you're talking about a guy getting 4 targets, can we consistently bank on 100 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets? Because we're looking at Olave getting like 11 targets. I would just rather have the guy getting 11 targets from Spencer Rattler and assume that at some point those targets are going to be more catchable and they're going to be in the end zone. They're going to be, catchable. That the usage, because usage is just more indicative of talent than the efficiency is when you're talking about these quarterback issues. And I want to lean into the talent. So I'm very high on Olave, and I think he has a chance to, again, come on down the stretch. Now, Rattler needs to fend off Tyler Shugg, and I think he is a disaster waiting to happen. But it is really consolidated here in in New Orleans. It's high volume. It's consolidated. So I do want to buy into Olave, and I think you could actually still probably send Pearsall for Olave with a plus on top. Nico shouts out Zay Flowers. I don't know if he means like pivot from Pearsall to Zay Flowers. If that's something you could do, I would absolutely do it. I don't think you can after how strong he's been these first 2 weeks, but what do I know? I'm not in your leagues. Zay Flowers, absolutely. I have moved up Zay Flowers pretty dramatically, actually, because he has just he's just on another level right now. He's being targeted on 39% of his routes. He's averaging 4.4 yards per route run. He has been phenomenal this year. He's getting these design targets. He's a 44% first read target percentage. He has 4 design targets through 2 games. He is the whole passing game right now. Lamar is throwing the ball to wide receivers more than he ever has. Maybe Isaiah Likely being out is part of that, but you still have to be able to do it. And he's doing it. So I've moved Zay Flowers up too, right next to Rome Odunze. I actually have Zay 1 spot ahead. You can call me a hater if you want. I have him 1 spot ahead. I think you could take either of those guys. They're both top 20 dynasty wide receivers for me. And I would certainly prefer him to Ricky Pearsall. All right. Jamie, by the way, I like Fantasy Calc for looking at trade value. I don't mind it. It's like not always going to be accurate, but nothing is going to be accurate to every league. But I would look at Fantasy Calc, and you can use the calculator, or you can just look at how they're ordered in terms of the ranks. It seems like they're updating pretty quickly in season as well, because they track based on actual trades. And so there's a lot of trade volume happening right now. And so the values do change pretty quickly as well. They're not lagging behind too badly, which is promising. There are some kind of crazy things that you see on there. Like I wanted to talk about, we can move on to running backs, I think, at this point. I wanted to check the Jaguars running backs, and this is crazy to me. Let me just make this bigger. Okay. This is what the running backs look like right now on Fantasy Calc. Oh, wait, hold on. It's cut off. Sorry, it's small, but this is because Fantasy Calc is just based on trades. The trades right now involving Jaguars running backs are insane. We have Travis Etienne sitting up here, 52nd overall, RB 20. We have Baishal Tutin down here at 122nd overall, RB 40. I'm going to tell you guys something that the members have known for months. You might not know this. I have Baishal Tutin ranked ahead of Travis Etienne in my dynasty rankings. So the idea that there is a 60 to 70 spot gap between these two, the other direction, I find frankly insane. I know that Travis Etienne is the starter right now. I will remind you all that Rachaad White was the starter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, and Etienne has looked better for sure than Rachaad White did. But we've also seen multiple seasons of Travis Etienne breaking down over the course of the season, starting with high efficiency early in the year and trailing off. We already saw his opportunity share come down from week 1 to week 2. They traded Tank Bigsby with the express purpose of getting Baishal Tutin on the field, and Baishal Tutin has been awesome so far while he's been on the field. Here we have a couple tweets from Jacob Gibbs, who is absolutely a ball knower, especially when it comes to Baishal Tutin. He points out that Tutin has the highest rushing success rate in the NFL among running backs with 10 or more attempts, and that he has gained at least 2 yards after contact on every single rush attempt. And then he points out here in the quote tweet, we can typically feel good about this formula. No negative plays, plus consistently making the most of opportunities, plus explosive play upside is more playing time. This is a concept called anti-fragility, but basically, right now the status quo favors Travis Etienne, but anything that can possibly go wrong favors Bishal Tootin. Like if there's an injury, Tootin can take the job and never give it back. If Tootin just outplays Etienne, he can take the job and never give it back. If Etienne just starts to play worse, Tootin can take the job. Like everything that could go wrong can really just go wrong. Mostly can go wrong for Etienne. Obviously, if we see Tootin just start fumbling the ball or whatever, that's not going to be the case. But for the most part, Tootin is the more resilient asset. And I think, personally, is more likely to be the guy that is winning you a league in weeks 15, 16, and 17. The guy looks phenomenal. Like, if you can go and look up, like, every touch from Bishal Tootin, I think Jacob Gibbs tweeted it out, actually. Go look up every touch. Like, this guy looks awesome so far. When I saw him catch that screen, the 2 screens, actually, he caught one for a touchdown later, too. I was like, this guy's going to be a stud. So, I guess one takeaway would be if you can trade Travis Etienne for Bishal Tootin with a big plus on top, I'm absolutely going to do that. I'm going to do that every time. Were there other running backs? There weren't a lot of other running backs. James Cook is a riser for me for sure. I moved him up. I think this is one where I kind of just got maybe a little bit over-focused on the spreadsheets and regression and not wanting to chase outliers with James Cook and just not realizing, like, he's an awesome player on an awesome offense. That being said, though, he is getting a higher percentage of the touches than he was last year. Like, last year, we actually started to see some scaling back of his work. And then this year, he's come out and just Ray Davis has been, like, stuffed in a locker, and they're not letting him play at all. And Cook is getting a higher percentage of the work than he was previously. And so, you know, if you had told me he was going to get 65% of the rushes every week, I would have ranked him higher. I just didn't know that was going to happen. I wasn't totally sure that was going to happen. So I have moved him up. I moved him up ahead of Chase Brown. I moved him ahead of Josh Jacobs, RJ Harvey, Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker. He's up to RB 12 for me in my rankings. So he's still behind, for me, Christian McCaffrey. He's still behind Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall. But all those other guys that were sort of in that late first conversation, I will take James Cook at this point. I think you can kind of just bank on these goal line touchdowns to continue. He does break so many big plays. And there is a safety, there is like a level of safety there. Even if you don't necessarily want to project him to give you the legendary 20 points per game type of season, because he doesn't get all the work. He doesn't get that many pass targets. There is something to be said for this floor of production in such a good offense with such a talented player with the long-term contract in place now. So we'll close out running backs there, and we can just do some questions for a bit, and then I want to talk about tight ends, and then we'll get out of here. I know you guys have been blowing up the chat. I apologize. Let me scroll back a little bit here to something else, the last thing we talked about. Isaac asks, is it time to sell Dobbins? I mean, I'm a big fan of RJ Harvey, and I do think he's going to grow his role. That's just typically what we see from rookies. And we haven't seen, Harvey hasn't done anything wrong. Like, he's done what he's been asked to do. He doesn't look bad out there when he touches the ball. But Dobbins has been given this veteran deference that I frankly didn't expect because he wasn't with the team before. But he's gotten this veteran deference. He hasn't made mistakes. But again, it's like the ETN thing, but even more dramatic, where there's just, you have the draft capital of RJ Harvey. You have the pass fragility of J.K. Dobbins, who wasn't efficient for most of last year. He's in a better spot now. There's a better blocking for him, more running back friendly scheme. But I still think this is going to be Harvey's backfield at some point. If you're not actively starting him every week and somebody will give you a second round pick, I'm definitely going to take that. And I think you can get it from a lot of people because people are hurting for running back production. He looks like a starter right now, but I would sell him for a second if you can get it. Love seeing all these messages. Tootin is my most owned player in Dynasty. I have Tootin in JCM. Would love to hear that. Tootin for a late first. I'm always going to take a first over an unproven player like this. It's just good process. Like, yes, sometimes there will be a Bucky Irving situation and you'll be like, man, I wish I hadn't sold him for a first. Most of the time, you're just going to be happy you have a first round pick. If you took a first round pick last year for Bucky Irving, maybe you took a value loss, but maybe you drafted Tyler Warren. Maybe you drafted Emeka Egbuka. Like, I think you're just so safe with a first round pick. It's really hard to turn that down. So I would take a first for him as much as I do like him. Sampson and a third or a second for Tootin. I would absolutely send Sampson and a third. Sampson and a second is probably getting up towards the peak of what I would be willing to trade. I think on like a really stacked value team, maybe a team where you have a lot of picks and you want to maybe take a lottery ticket on a guy that could gain a lot of value, I could see doing that. Bucky and a first for London. I'm going to take the Bucky side, I think, in most cases, but it's not that far off. Like, it's pretty close. I have Bucky ranked pretty high. He got a lot of opportunities his first game. I think he's a phenomenal player. So he sits around like 30th overall for me. I've got London around 20. It just depends. I think it depends. If you're in a smaller league, shallower league, full PPR, where, maybe it's like a 10-team league and you just want to consolidate to the highest valued, most secure players, I could see taking London. But a whole first round pick to tier down to another guy that can still like win you a league, I don't know. It's hard for me to turn down the Bucky side of that trade. I don't think you have to go one way or the other. What do you do with Njoku? I mean, what can you do with Njoku? He's startable in tight end premium for now. If you could sell him for a second, I think that would be fine to just kind of re-roll him. I don't know how many people are really offering that right now. I'm less worried about Njoku than I am like Evan Ingram, for sure. But it's not going to be great when they move on from Flacco to another quarterback, because I just don't think there's going to be enough pass attempts to go around for all these different guys that are demanding targets, and his first read target share is low. Like, he's just rarely a guy they're actually going to deliberately. So it's not great. I'm not really worried about Breece versus if it's Tyrod versus Fields. If anything, Tyrod might throw him a few more passes. Fields was not good last week. I don't really know how good he is, how much of week one was just a mirage. Considering the Seahawks also ran all over the Steelers. The Steelers defense just might not be very good. But no, I mean, I think you still can totally start Breece, and I don't really know if it's like a meaningful downgrade for him. The good news for Breece is he widened the gap between him and Braylon this week in terms of snaps. He played like 30 snaps and Braylon Allen played 9. So that's the thing we should be happy about. Tim, what's up, dude? One of our longest tenured Pure Potential members. Do you think Evan Ingram turns it around? Unfortunately, I don't think so. Evan Ingram is not running a very high percentage of routes. He ran like 58% this week. You could maybe see that get a little bit higher if he was slightly limited by the calf, but I do think that they want like Adam Troutman on the field for blocking, and that makes sense. Evan Ingram is a non-viable blocker. He was one of the biggest causes for the Jaguars having a terrible run game for years because they would never take him off the field, and he's just a turnstile. The Broncos don't want to do that. They want to put him on the field in certain spots to run routes, but he's not going to be on the field all the time, and he's just not that good. He's not that good at commanding targets, so I am worried about Ingram. I moved him down considerably. Come winter, I would not sell RJ Harvey for a second. I don't know why we would do that. I think I was talking about J.K. Dobbins earlier, so you may have mixed up those two guys. I was not saying you should sell RJ Harvey for a second. I would not do that. Dynasty Dave, what's up, dude? Glad you could pop in. Larson wants some thoughts on Kayshon Boutte. Thought it was the start of a breakout, then one target. I mean, it's going to be inconsistent. I think I'm just really hard pressed to believe that he's this star in the making, just with such an unusual journey that he's been on. But I thought the whole game against the Dolphins was strange because the Dolphins are supposed to have like the worst cornerback room in the NFL, and they barely threw to the wide receivers. They threw to Diggs a bit and nobody else. And they ran everything through like the running backs in the passing game, and like Austin Hooper was involved. It was very weird. But yeah, I don't know. Kayshon Boutte's made some good plays. I'm still not really that convinced on him. I would still sell him for like a second if you could get it. Not that that's readily available in every league, but like if there is a truther out there that thinks he's going to be a thing, I'm really skeptical. A donkey. How do you feel about Judkins after his first game? I mean, it's hard to make. I haven't really like gone back and watched all of his touches, and it's probably not going to tell me a whole lot against the Ravens anyway. I think the fact that he is back already in week 2, that Sampson had very little time to build up any kind of a lead, that they were willing to give him so many touches in his first game back, I think all of that bodes very well for him and not very well for the other players in the backfield. So I did move him up a little bit just on that basis. I still think Dylan Sampson's going to hold on to a receiving role throughout the year. I think that's going to cap the ceiling for Judkins. I think the offense is still going to be bad. So I think I'm close to being just back to where I started with Judkins. It's just that he's not going to play a totally full-time role because he's just not, I don't think he adds that much value as a receiver. And again, he's on a bad team. So he's in that like early second round value range for me. Absolutely, I would take a late first for JCM. Yes. When you can get a first, here's what I'll say. Like if you can get a first, if someone's going to offer you a first round pick for a player who is at most worth a late first, but is probably worth less than that, you just take it, because first that look late can end up not being late. And the odds that JCM ends up being a player that's worth more or even even the same as the guys you're taking in the late first, I just think are really low. For me, there's a difference between late first round value versus being worth a first round pick. Like a player can even be worth late first round value. Like someone like Kenneth Walker, for example. I think he's worth about late first value. I would not trade a first round pick for Kenneth Walker because a first round pick is such a finite resource that you can only trade, you've got the one shot to trade it. And I'm not going to trade a first round pick. It's a very scarce asset that has a ton of value insulation, a ton of value upside. It has absolutely no downside whatsoever. I'm not going to trade that asset for a player that is equal in value to that asset because it's just better to have the liquidity of the asset. So in general, any questions like that, I'm going to side with the first. Jamie, do you do Dynasty team reviews? I absolutely do Dynasty team reviews. There is a link in the description to a Google form for a Dynasty team breakdown. You'll see an example there. I do breakdowns. They're available right now. The turnaround time is about 7 days from the time that they are paid for. And yeah, I've gotten good reviews on them. I think they're helpful to kind of pick a direction for your team, set some goals, identify some buys and sells. So yeah, appreciate the question, and there is a link in the description for that. All right, guys, we got to wrap this thing up. I want to throw a couple little data points at you about tight ends, and then we're going to get out of here. So first of all, Tucker Kraft is a thing. I wasn't sure if he was going to be a thing, but I kept him ranked reasonably high throughout the offseason because he's a very talented player. He's leading the Packers in routes now. He hit target shares of 18% and 26% in his first 2 weeks. This is really promising. This is like a full-blown breakout on top of what we saw last year, where He was just thriving on efficiency. Now he's got volume in his favor. Now we've got Jaden Reed out for 6 to 8 weeks. Matthew Golden's not looking too hot to start the year. Kraft could be the guy for the Packers in the passing game. He's a legit great yards after catch weapon. So this is really promising for him. And you've also got this here. He ranks pretty highly in first read target rate as well for week 2, 25%. There's also some interesting names here. Trey McBride, just ridiculous. Juwan Johnson and Kyle Pitts are also 2 players I want to talk about. I have been so adamantly against Kyle Pitts, and it seems like I'm just destined to be wrong about him every year, no matter what. Not that I think he's going to become like this star tight end, but his role is changing again. Last year, he was a guy who ran routes part-time, who didn't get first read targets. He was an afterthought in the offense. He wasn't a guy they were going to and scheming things up for. Now, here we have him in week 2 with a 31% first target rate. And he ran 100% of the routes. He ran a route on 100% of dropbacks. Like, this is just not what we saw from him last year. So I just can never get it right with this guy. But if he's going to run 100% of the routes and he's going to get a decent first read target rate, he's going to be startable, very startable in tight end premium leagues. I'm not going to move him up dramatically. Again, I don't think we're getting like the generational tight end, whatever, Kyle Pitts. But these are numbers in line with a guy you can absolutely play in tight end premium. So I don't know. I'm just destined to get it wrong, unfortunately. And then Juwan Johnson is the last guy that I want to talk about here. Two things here. Or sorry, wait. I got Tyler Warren as well. Juwan Johnson right here, this one. Juwan Johnson through 2 weeks, okay? Tight end 1 in expected fantasy points per game. Tight end 2 in first read target share. Tight end 2 in targets per out run. Tight end 2 in percent of team yards. Tight end 5 in yards per game. Tight end 4 in route share. Juwan Johnson is a thing, guys. He is absolutely happening. He got a decent extension this offseason, which seemed weird. But now that I see the team wants to feature him as a full-time, every route type of player, makes a little bit more sense. Again, this offense with Kellen Moore is fast-paced and it's very consolidated. It's all Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Juwan Johnson. And right now, Johnson is second in that pecking order. So he's a guy that has to move up into like the second round pick conversation in tight end premium. He looks legit. I would rather have him in Dynasty than Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, David Njoku. He moves up for me, for sure. He is real. I want to buy into this. I'd rather have him in Dynasty than Isaiah Likely. I'd rather have him in Dynasty than probably Jake Ferguson. I don't know. I'm going to have to look and see where I put him because it's probably not high enough. You should be excited about Juwan Johnson. And I would still go and try to buy him just to see if you can. And then Tyler Warren, man, the dude is just an animal. Like, through their first 2 games, you can see Brock Bowers 17 targets, Tyler Warren 16. Brock Bowers 156 receiving yards, Tyler Warren 155. I don't think Tyler Warren was quite the prospect that Brock Bowers was. I don't think we're going to necessarily be taking him in the first round of startups, but I have moved him up even higher than I had him last week because he showed me again that he is a focal point in this passing game. He is sitting right now for me, let's see, 26th overall in Dynasty, tight end premium. So second pick of the 3rd round for me if I was doing a startup right now. Tyler Warren he's a dog. He's legit. It was nice to see Josh Downs back, though, leading the team in targets this week. That felt good to me. But yeah, Warren is the guy. And Chasing Breakers makes a really good point about Juwan Johnson, that he does look like Mr. Milchick from Severance. So that is a bonus. Absolutely a bonus. That has to be worth at least like half a tier in the rankings. Just so you guys can see. Juwan Johnson. There you go. All right. Guys, this has been fun. I enjoyed this one a little more than last week. I feel like we're figuring some stuff out here as far as the format. I'll be back again on Monday. Well, I'll be back before that, but we'll do this again next Monday. I'll be back later this week with at least one video talking about some moves that you could look to make, trying to be a little more precise, hone my thoughts in a little more from this kind of quick look. And then I think next week, as soon as I can get it put together, I'll have a video on rebuilding. What should you do if the season's just not going well for you? You need to rebuild. I know that that's got to be kind of time sensitive. So I am working on that too. I'll have a video out on that as soon as I can. But we also have buys and sells we got to take care of. So we're going to be doing both of those. Monday night is coming up here in a little while. Biggest thing for me, I have an FFPC team I'm sharing with one of my friends in the Big Gorilla contest. We have Brock Bowers and Justin Herbert. I would love a big game from those two guys because we're projected right now to lose by like 8 points. Mostly because I wanted to play Dylan Sampson and he wanted to play JCM and we played JCM. So I'm blaming him if we lose. But yeah, Bowers and Herbert for sure. Excited to see Ibuka play in his second game, see if he can follow up some of that momentum from the first time. And I would love to see Nico Collins drop one of these huge games that we saw from guys like Amon-Ra and Neighbors and stuff. I would just love one of those games. Please give me a Nico Collins blow up spot. All right, everybody. It has been real. I've enjoyed hanging out with you all. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy Monday Night Football, and I will talk to you guys soon.